Yes, we can start.
Namaste everyone. Hardik Abhinandan to all. Before we start, let's have Waves Kulgeet to have a look on the journey of Waves so far.
प्रस्तुत है वेव्स कुलगीत।
पुराणों स्मृति ग्रंथों में निहित अमूल्य सार हम जाने, तत्व ज्ञान ही बोध हमारा, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा। दशकों से है वेव्स दे रहा अवसर चर्चा का, चिंतन का।
दशकों से है वेव्स दे रहा अवसर चर्चा का, चिंतन का।
एक मंच पर सबको लाना ध्येय रहा हर सम्मेलन का, वैश्विक हित कर्तव्य हमारा, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा।
ऋतं भरा प्रज्ञा से उतरूं, ऋतं भरा प्रज्ञा से उतरूं, भ्रमजालों से दूर बचे हम।
स्वस्थि भाव पूरित जीवन हो, अनृत मार्ग से दूर रहे हम, चिदानंद गंतव्य हमारा, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा।
वेद है माध्यम जिसका प्यारा,
वेदाध्ययन है, वेदाध्ययन है, वेदाध्ययन है लक्ष्य हमारा।
We are here today for Waves webinar talk number 11. This is a joint initiative by the Word Association for Vedic Studies USA, also known as Waves International, along with wider Association for Vedic Studies, also known as Waves India. Waves International and Waves India are multidisciplinary academic organizations renowned for providing scholarly forums to facilitate productive discussion, and research on Vedic traditions. This WAVES webinar series explores Vedic knowledge through the various scholars and researchers and their thought-provoking writings. On that note, on behalf of WAVES, I, Dr. Aparna Dheer, Secretary WAVES India, welcome everyone attending along with our eminent guest of today's program. Today's webinar focuses on the theme Reclaiming Sanskrit, why we need to decolonize Sanskrit English to restore the true essence of Sanatan Dharma. That will focus on the research which led the distinguished speaker of today to write the first decolonized Bhagavad Gita Comes Alive and his current work, a second book titled 108 Sanskrit Words, which further dismantles colonial interpretations and clarifies the Sanatan Dharma worldview, free from Christian terms such as Lord, God, heaven, hell, sin, faith, idols, and many other misinterpretations. So, to know more, let's invite our learned speaker of today's talk, Shri Jeffrey Armstrong ji. Also, we known him as Kavindra Rishi ji. He is an ICCR Distinguished Indologist 2021, received CHCC Lifetime Achievement Award 2022. He is a best-selling author, linguistic, philosopher, poet, and a Vedic astrologer for over 45 years. He is the founder of Vedic Academy of Science and Arts, co-chairman of Vedic Friends Association, and a scholar on the British Board of Dharmic Scholars. Jeffrey G has a unique gift to speak the ancient Vedic yogic knowledge in a dynamic and a transformative language that inspires audience of all ages. He has degrees in psychology, history, and comparative religion and literature. He has dedicated most of his adult life to learning about and practicing and teaching the Vedic wisdom. At the age of 50, he left the corporate world and took a vow to only teach the Vedic knowledge as his dedication for the rest of his life. For the past 27 years, he has taught in the West and also worked with prominent Indian organizations to help with the revival of Sanatan Dharma culture. So it's very pleasing for us to welcome Shri Jeffrey ji for his learned talk today. We welcome you, Jeffrey ji.
Well, it is such an honor to be here with my favorite organization, the Waves of Bliss and Ananda that are spreading throughout our planet Matabhumi. So I begin Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Because coming in from the outside, one knows for sure that they only know what they know through the kindness and love and wisdom of their gurus. Honored to be with you today. You want me to speak, or shall you ask me questions?
Sure, sir. No,
Which
no.
would you
You
like?
want we want you to at least share your knowledge on the topic you have given us for today's talk, for this presentation, and then we will have interaction session after you spoke about your opinion on the topic.
All right. Well, the place I love to begin a discussion of this kind is Om Yakundendu tu Sarahara Davalaya Subharavasta Vrita Ya Vina Varadandamandita Karya Sveta Padmasana Ya Brahmachuta Shankara Prabriti Bir Devai Sadavandita Samam Patau Sarasvati Bhagavati Mihishesha Jadyapaha. Because this is all about vocabulary. And since I have come in from the outside, I am acutely aware of the dynamic of having a vocabulary, a new vocabulary that is actually the wisdom of the Vedas personified as Brahma and Sarasvati, and of course, the Vedic library and Sanskritam, the perfected language. All of these gifts have poured into my life and given me a life. And so it eventually occurred to me, I could see more and more clearly that my vocabulary was a crucial part of this transformation. And so the Sanskrit language, I actually had a professor of it who had Ramanath Sharma, who was a professor at the University of Hawaii East-West Center years ago. He initiated me into Sanskrit, to Sanskritam, because he had memorized all the grammatical rules of the Ashtadhyayi Panini. He was a pundit. And through his association, I came to know what a pundit really is. And what he taught eventually showed me that the English language does not have a precision for the concepts of who we are. It's a hodgepodge of various terms come together. Its benefit could be a global planetary language which takes a vocabulary from places like the Veda and then learns how to express itself as a global culture, because indeed it is from Bharat, and I like to call the country that's politically called India Bharat. It is from Bharat that Sanskritam, that the Vedic Vidya has spread in waves throughout the world. And I believe that's where you all come in, as waves. So in this process, Namaste is a good place to begin. And what is it? What is the dilemma? And this is where the philosophical meets the linguistic, because we need a vocabulary, to talk about who we really are, where we really are. And I like also to begin with Matabhumi. There's a good reason for this, because the word bhumi gives us the word humus, the oil, the soil, the earth, the substance in which our life grows. And then we become humans. So English took these words right out of the Sanskrit, but no one speaking English understands that the planet they're on is not just earth, which is from the Sanskrit artha, kama, artha, dharma, moksha. So earth is artha. It's the earth. It's the place where we're working. It's the place where we're acting. But it's Matabhumi. It's Mother Earth. We say that in English, but then that doesn't tell us about being humus or humans or even humility, all those qualities that we should have in relationship to Matabhumi. And this also shows us right away that the Vedic culture is the leader of what's now called ecology. It should be called the Vedic worldview of Dharma. And the root of Dharma is Dri. And Dri is from the Ri, or the Ritam. And the Ritam gives us the English word right, the right way. The right way to do things is to obey the laws of nature. But nature is not only Matabhumi, but it's the entirety of the Devas and Devis, and that's where our word in English divine comes from. From Deva and Devi gives us divine. Divine means those who are representatives of the Ritam, the right way to do things. That is to say, the inherent rules of the universe that make life possible. And that word Ri is the root of this critical Sanskrit word, Dharma. The Vedic culture is a dharmic culture, a culture which begins seeing everyone as an immortal being who is visiting the realm of Prakriti. And there's the Kriti word, the Ri, again, the Ritam, the rules, the rituals, all those are from the Ritam. But we have to give credit where credit is due. And colonization was just the opposite of that. It was the English and the English language going out into the world. And I must say, with the permission, with the indications of the Pope, of the Catholic Church. So this was a rather misdirected form of love. If I don't think Jesus would have done it. So for someone like myself, coming from inside a culture that was a hodgepodge of different cultures, my gurus and my teacher of Sanskrit and the various things that they have shared have now become what I would consider a programming language. We need to reprogram ourselves and the world. And a programming is actually an aligning with the truth of nature, which is the Ritam, or the rules of nature. So I consider that this is an opportunity for us now to speak these principles and to give a new vocabulary to the whole world so that they too can have a universal language. And that is, of course, what Sanskrit is. It's the universal language. And so with this, we can see that prakri iti, so the Ritam is there at the center again. And Ritam, the rhythm of life, is actually again from the Ritam. And Amrita is the medicine that cures all ills. It is the joy and ecstatic feeling that comes from association with the Devas and Devis. And the Devas and Devis are the representatives of something even beyond that. But we don't have a vocabulary for that in English, and we have to bring in the Sanskrit. And so we then say, Brahman, Briha. The Ri is there again. In the Ritam, it comes from Brahman, meaning that this was all purposely created as an opportunity for all of us. So who are we? We are Jiva Atmas. The word atomic is from the Latin atome, which means you can't cut it. But that comes from the Sanskrit Atma. That's right. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, can't cut it, can't burn it, can't break it. It's the Atma. We're immortal Atmas. That's who we are internationally. Without a word like that, how can we reorganize the planet in a nonviolent way, showing everyone how to honor one another and see each other in this particular way? Again, we need a vocabulary. We need a word for that. I see you as you really are. You're an Atma. I honor that. And I will try to show you that respect in every situation. And let's work together on Mata Bhumi to see what we can do to bring Amrita to the whole world and to make it sustainable, something that will continue because we obey the laws of nature, of Ritam. So that is an example of what I have learned and how I have seen it coming together for the benefit of all of those on the planet, is that this movement, I would call it you've heard the word Oriental? Well, this Sanskrit language is reorienting the world. It is the new programming language. Without a programming language, we couldn't be doing what we're doing right now and communicating in this way. So obviously, it is the Ritam that the so-called laws of science and nature are tapping into, and that was discussed in the Sanskrit for thousands of years before this particular moment in history. So in my understanding and opinion, and what I've learned from my gurus, if we can bring the Vedic Vidya together with technology we can avoid the dangers of technology, which we see hovering above us right now. The world is poised in a crucial moment of destruction, the possibility of destruction being unprecedented. And we don't know how to see each other this way. We don't understand the ritam. We don't know that we're from Brahman, Briha, brilliant. And one of my favorite mantras is the 108 names of the sun, Surya, Surya and Savitri. And Surya is the, and watch, Surya, Aryaman, Bhaga, Tvastar, Pushan, Arka. Arka, is that the archetype? Is that archaeology? Is that the original form of everything? It certainly is. The mantra goes on to express the 108 different energies and qualities that are emanating from Surya, and that we can participate in those as our universal legacy. And it's almost like sunbathing. So throughout the world, people know how to sunbathe because they get the minimal clothing on and they let the sun's rays give them a healthy body and a healthy life force. So we're about to do the same thing with the Sanskrit language, with these rays of sunlight emanating from Surya, from Sarasvati, from Brahma. And this is another very important aspect of this, that the universe is populated, that it is indeed one turning, and it is divine, but divya comes from deva and devi. See, the thing that everyone forgot during colonization was that for example, the English language wouldn't be scientific unless the Latin language had been given to it. So about 600-700 years ago, a couple thousand Latin words were dumped into English so it would be smart. So to give you an example then, what is the heart called? What do we call a heart specialist in medicine? Think for a moment. Cardiologist. Ah, that's a Latin word, isn't it? Yes. See, in Latin, my forearm, it's just the forearm in English, but it's the extensor digitorum profundus in Latin. Scientifically speaking, this is the extensor. It extends digitorum profundus. It's not just the forearm. So what about the ritam? What about the rules of nature? What about dri and kri? Well, what is kri? Kri is cause and effect. Cause and effect. But what does the scientific study of cause and effect come from? What's the mother of it? Sanskritam. Kri, ri, ritam, the root of action, or kirtan, or kri, or karma, is the ritam. And then dharma is the correct way of behaving and of acting. And that's also dri, the ritam. Conforming to, adhering to. And if we're going to live on Mata Bhumi together, then we need to have dharma. We need to have the ritam, the right rhythm. We need to know who we are. Ah, so what's the name for who we are? Are we souls? What does soul come from? Well, actually, from the Latin sol, S-O-L. And what is that? The Surya, the sun. And what is the mantra that all practitioners of the Vedic culture chant 3 times a day if they're participating? Om Bhuvasva, above where I am, below where I am, and where I am. Tat Savitur Vareniyam, The light of the sun is shining everywhere. Bhargo devasya dhimahi. I'm just like that in my intrinsic nature. I'm an Atma. Dio yona prachodayat. I adore that light in the sky and wish to become like it. I want to behave that way. I want to illuminate the world. And so it is that all of these Sanskrit words are buried inside of the English language, and yet, thus far, no one has told the rest of the world about this. So what I hope will come from what we're doing and from what Waves is doing globally, I think of it as the beautiful waves of a much needed Amrita that is flooding the world, but giving it life. And it will do so by giving it a vocabulary of universal cooperation, so that we not only understand that the entire Jagat has been organized and continues to be so by Devas and Devis working on behalf of, and now we're going to take a word, the one that I think you probably all have now heard about, and you know that it's the word God. But all of these words are just substitutes for the more specific and precise Sanskritam. And so where do we live? Pra, Kri, Iti. We're right now residing in Prakriti. Where are we from? Briha, Brahman. What is the sun? Surya. What is the sun a reflection of? The light of immortality and eternity, the Briha, the brilliance. And so the English word is Brahman, but they say, in English, we say brilliance. That's Brihada, and the Briha is Brahman. All of this needs to now be sorted out, to be brought forward. And I consider this the Vedic Renaissance. The library of Sanskrit, of Sanskritam literature is now going to unfold and become the stories. And so instead of once upon a time, I begin the storybook for eternity outside of time. All of this has existed as the Ritam, as something that is always there. So what are we doing? Well, we are Atmas. And this you can see, it's where the word atomic came from. Atomic weapons came about because we split the atom. By splitting the atom, then we released this powerful, dangerous energy. But it's the Ritam, it's the Atma that the word atomic comes from. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says very clearly, you can't cut it, you can't burn it, you can't break it. It's the Atma. So from that came atome in Latin, and from that came atomic in English. But now instead of atomic reminding us of the Atma, we've used it to make weapons to destroy each other. So we've got to help make a shift. I consider this the Vedic Renaissance. And for that, we need a vocabulary. And that is what we're doing at this moment here today. So perhaps we can have more saintly people in the world. So what Sanskrit word is that from? Saintly? Could it be Shanti? Ah. And is Shanti something to do with Brahman? It could be one of the 5 rasas. Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. What are those? The flavor of relationships of various kinds with persons. So persons have got to be an important part of this. So that could be that this English word person comes from the word Purusha. Pura Isha. So this Vedanta. And this was a favorite of mine. What comes from that is dental. So it puts teeth in your philosophy when you realize that Vedanta is the source of your teeth, without which you couldn't say much. But this is the words that we now need to bring in. It's a programming language, and it will reprogram the discussion word by word and allow us to have a vocabulary of being Atmas. And in a way, this is the international handshake that has been initiated by Bharat on behalf of Matabhumi. And it says, you know, the best policy is cooperating together and following the ritam, the rules that are conducting this planet and this cosmos. This is what the Sanskrit language is. It's the intergalactic programming language that we are able to participate in, and then we'll understand what. So what is the corollary to this? If we're not Atmas, then we only have one lifetime, one chance at what? And this is where the absence of Sanskrit and the Abrahamic religions have let us down. Now, I'm not being disrespectful. All of the religions of the world have some truths in them that they have been passing down. And we, as members of the Vedic culture, honor and respect that. There's truths in each of those traditions. But they have missed a very important, crucial point. And so has modern science. And that is the Kala Shastra, the science of time. This is what Jyotish is. It's the science of light. But this takes us back to the sun, Surya. And Surya takes us back to Briha, or Brahman. And this takes us back to Bhagavan, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Svayam. Eventually, there's a progression with language to take us in all the different directions on a universal basis. So what science and modern religions do not have is a Mahatma worldview. They have a Duratma worldview, a one lifetime, one chance, very uptight, very nervous, very dangerous. And they don't even know. They're not doing this maliciously often, but unconsciously. They don't know that it's the fact that they're not a Mahatma that keeps them a Duratma, and duress, distress, damage, destruction are what result from Durat. So I think there I've unveiled a part of this work. So if I may, I'd like to hand the microphone back to Dr. Arparna and let this be led forward a little bit by Q&A, or perhaps she can send me in a direction that she would like.
Sure, Dr. Jeffrey G. That was very nice. And actually, you have pointed out many good things in your talk, like somewhat related to Purushartha and then Rhythm, and also from how to obey the laws of nature, how our words, our own words, Devi and Devtas, are related to the divine. So I think many people are here, many learned scholars are here in our on this platform. So we may like to have some interaction, and as you are very much interested, so I request our scholars to kindly share their questions, but be brief and crisp, and so that there is no need to write in the chat. So I invite Dr. Lalan sir, do you want to ask something? Yes,
Okay.
please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Jeffrey, were very impressive and scholarly talk. Now, Sanskrit has given the world a world outlook, and you have rightly interpreted Matri-bhumi, Surya, Gayatri Mantra, other in a very lucid manner. I just wanted to know that there are so much diversity in the views in different religions. And in spite of the fact that Vedic religion is the oldest in the world, in the modern times, it doesn't have that recognition as it has in the remote past. Technological development, as you have rightly said, have distorted a lot of things in this world. How to overcome this phenomena and how to spread the Vedic mission, which says, Sarve bhavantu sukhna, sarve santu niramaya. How this message can be really got into the minds of the people who have the divergent views in terms of different religions, different philosophies. How to integrate it? Can you throw some light on this?
Yes, that is an excellent question. And it was where I was leading us, because for this to be a user-friendly conversation, we have to become Mahatma.
Mhm.
And we who are trying to encourage others to do so are not looking down upon them. We're looking over at them and saying, okay, here's the missing component. It starts here, but this is a secret. The secret is I'm looking at each living entity. Any being that is animating matter is an Atma surrounded by the elements of earth, water, fire, air, space, all of which have Sanskrit names, and then manas, and then buddhi, and then ahamkara. So it turns out that we all are universal beings. And this is the missing vitamin right now. We don't know how to continually reestablish that and say that, yes, keep your culture, keep your appearance, keep your gender. This is not against anyone in that sense. It's in favor of everyone, but you're thinking small-minded, one lifetime. If you could just expand that and realize that we are immortal beings, we cannot die. That's why we don't want to. Now, with that in mind, the picture changes because the worldview becomes a worldview. One lifetime is not a worldview. One lifetime is a tiny taste that has no sense to it. It doesn't explain all the other living entities. The only thing we can think to do with them is eat them. We can't think of them as atmas like ourselves. And so those worldviews, whether they be religious, and by the way, religion is from Latin religare. It means a book of rules. So here's the thing to remember, that science creates books on subjects, and religion is a book of rules somebody made up for behavior. But religare means you have a narrow book of rules and you only live one lifetime. So there's no explanation of who you are. This is the missing component. Everyone, every living entity is an Atma, a Jiva Atma. Viva la Jiva. Viva la Jiva Atma. So if we can introduce this Namaste culture and say, look, the goal of this is not to negate your religion, it's to fulfill it by treating everyone in such a way that they're divine and honored and respectful, and that they join in, and that we don't see their skin as them or their species. We see every animated creature as an immortal being in a large, so I like to call the universe the university. The universe is a university. And why should we hate or harm or dislike all the other students? But if we don't understand that they're all students, it's kind of stupid because we don't see who they are. It's not stupendous. It could be. Not stupid, but stupendous if we hold a Mahatma worldview. And this is what the culture of Bharat has been trying to get through. And now we're at the time, not only when we can destroy each other universally, quickly, in a few moments, but when therefore we need this. This is more than just words. This is a medicine. This is the support for a worldview so that we have a way to talk with one another in spite of the differences that we have culturally, as a species, between one another. We actually could learn how to live on Mathabhumi in such a way that we all work together. And I believe that this is the ambassadorial moment for the Vedic culture to come back, and we have to have a point of entree for this. And it is the vocabulary. It's having new words so that with those words we can keep from opposing one another. We can see each other correctly. We can hold the long view instead of the short view. And really, all this rests upon the right vocabulary. So think of it this way. Since we understand programming computers, what if we're trying to find a programming language that has a universal perspective? And that's what Sanskrit is. It's the universal programming language. It talks to us as participants in something that crosses eons of time. We don't have just one lifetime. We're in university. It's the university we're in. And in that university, the things you did in the past are still yours. Why? Because you have a future. If you take away the future, if you make only one life, there's no such thing as karma. It makes no sense. But as soon as there's unlimited lifetimes because you can't die, then karma or cause and effect really makes sense. It's not for making nuclear bombs. The real original meaning of bomb was BALM, something that soothes you, calms you, and makes you peaceful. It was a balm, not a bomb. So we've got to stop bombing each other and start balming each other. And we do this through the universal language. And we do this with a vocabulary. And we do this with a way of seeing one another. And that allows us to become universal ambassadors. So I call us Rambassadors, because we should be like Ram and like Hanuman. That's what these great epics were for. They're itihasa. They're to show us what really is. And itihasa means as it really was. What was it? It was an appearance of the supreme being. So let's bring that into the conversation a little bit. The religions of the world have trouble because they don't have the broad worldview that goes with their attempts at having a relationship with the supreme. So congratulations for trying, but you have to have a Mahatma worldview. And Sanskrit is simply the universal language that is used by Mahatmas so that we can talk about one another as all participating in the same experience. And therefore we have a way of shanti, of bringing peace to the world. So really Sanskrit is the universal ambassador's language of common interest that speaks to everyone in such a way and gives them a vocabulary so that they know how to articulate a Mahatma worldview, one that has a future. And right now, our children are looking around and going, I don't get it. I did this when I was young. I heard of the nuclear weapons first in second grade. And my second grade teacher told the class that America had dropped atomic bombs on Japan and wiped out whole cities. It broke my heart. It made me I cried and I was so unhappy. I was so concerned. It's a heartbreaker. So how could we do that? How could we drop a bomb on beings who are Atmas just like us? First, they can't die. Secondly, we're destroying everything, their culture, their bodies. Is that any way to make friends? So we've got to turn this around. How do we turn it around peacefully is the question. If we get more weapons than you, that's just the finale. We'll be done. But if we have a language of speaking to each other ambassadorially, we can link the cultures together. And this, I propose to you, is exactly what Sanskrit is. It gives a vocabulary, a vocabulary, a way of speaking that is Maha-Atma, that sees everyone, sees the big picture, sees the many lifetimes, sees everyone as a Jiva-Atma, visiting the realm of Prakriti from the realm of Brahman. Do you see that nobody could do that with other languages? English doesn't have words. Neither does French, neither does Latin, neither does Greek. None of the languages, what to speak of the other world languages. So this is the contribution we're trying to bring, but we don't want them to think that we're disrespectful of them. So this needs to remain while we say, would you like to learn a vocabulary of words that empowers you to a wider, more global, more universal worldview? Would you like to learn the rhythm? There you go. And what do we have in music? Rhythm. Yes, Dr. Aparna, over to you.
Yes, because you have given a very crisp presentation, so we have time for interaction. And many of the 3-4 questions I'm seeing in the chat, and also one hand raise in the audience. So I first invite Miss Hannah Ji to ask a question if she has anything to say.
And I'll give short answers.
Hello, namaste. Thank you, Kavindra Rishi. I was wondering, you started talking about the soul, and then you were talking about Surya, but I was wondering why you don't use the word soul. You didn't mention why you don't use the word soul.
Because the word, great question, the word is Latin, S-O-L, sol, and it means the sun. So the word soul simply means the bright shining object in the sky that gives us light and heat. But that's not who we are, but it's a metaphor. It's saying we're like that. So our Atma is the correct word, is unbreakable, uncuttable, and it's shining and bright like Surya, the sun in the sky. It's like that. So it's Sol, it's like the Sol, and that's why we do Gayatri Mantra. That's why I explained Gayatri Mantra, because we say, I'm trying to be like you. You're my role model. I'm trying to be a Sol. And in that case, if you know this, you could say, like the sun, Sol, Surya, and I'm an Atma, and I cannot die. And my light will never be put out. It will always be shining. So this is where we use words to just improve the conversation, shall we say. Excellent question. Thank you.
Jeffrey G, if I might add, namaste, everybody. My name is Sandy. I'm Jeffrey's assistant at VASA. And I just wanted to give you a list of some of the words that Jeffrey removed from the Bhagavad Gita Comes Alive. And these are some of the offending words. And Hannah, that was a great question. Jeffrey always says that soul, when you use the word soul, it's in the context of the Christian one lifetime viewpoint, whereas Atma is in the viewpoint of reincarnation. Just so that you know that reincarnation, I'm sure you're all scholars, but this was the heresy of Christianity, is to have more than one lifetime. So if you just give me 1 second, I want to read some of these words, because Jeffrey's goal is to start taking out these words from our vocabulary. So if you refer to any Bhagavad Gita, you'll see that all of these words are in it. For example, Dharma is not religion. Svargaloka is not heaven. Isha is not Lord. Papa is not sin. Tapasya has been translated to austerity. Atmas to soul, which we know. Pranic is translated to spiritual. That's one of the big offending words. Now, Jeffrey might tell you why. God is not the same as Bhagavan. Shraddha is not faith. Varna is not caste. Patiala to hell is not, they are not the same. Dave, and this is a big one here. Everyone is doing, and this is the other where you get caught with Christianity and the many gods. Everyone translate devas to gods or demigods, half a god. And in the Christian point of view, there's only one God, and this it really puts you in a PR mess. The other one is avatar to prophet. And there's at least 100 others. So some of these words are so important to stop using. Another one, when we hear on the news that everybody's calling the deities idols, you are putting yourself into a very precarious position globally with the Christian community, because their tenet is thou shalt not have any other gods before me, and you are idol worshippers. So when you continue to call your deities or murtis idols, you are just playing into that propaganda. So it would be our request that some of these words come out. It's just like the French add croissant into the English vocabulary. We want to add Sanskrit words into the English vocabulary, since it's not a great language, but it is a global language. So how to get Sanskrit in, these words are so important. Over to you, Jeffrey. I just wanted to give everybody that list. Thank you.
I'm so glad you did. Thank you, Sandy. And yes, and by the way, our ideals or our idols or our ideas, they're all from the same word. And it's the Vedic vidya, videya. So vidya, videya, idea, ideal, idol, they're all etymologically connected. But until we know that and see the chain of them and see that they're distortion from the original word, which was much more universally useful. So you might say there's been a degradation of language and a lack of perspective. And so when we see this, then we start taking those distorted words out of our vocabulary and we start using the precise ones. And we now become participants in, and what Sandy said about the Abrahamic religions is very important. They're offended and even violent against this wider worldview. But the Vedic worldview is that we are all immortal beings. We've chosen to experience this realm of Prakriti. We cannot die. We knew that when we made the choice of coming here. We forgot it when we come here. We got what I call I-amnesia. We forgot who we are. That's why this is so important, because at the basis of changing the worldview is changing the identity of the individual, and the basis that of the Vedic culture that makes it able to do this is that we cannot die. We already cannot. Nothing can make us die. These clothes will wear out. Everybody who has clothes knows that. If they suddenly have clothes, but they don't know what's happening as the clothes are wearing out, they're terrified and upset and hurt feelings. My clothes are wearing out. Yes, of course, they're wearing out. They're not you. They're your clothing. This is our clothing. So is this. This is our body. We're wearing the body. So aham brahmasmi. That's a global slogan from the Vedic culture. Just remember, you're an immortal Atma. You cannot die. You're from a realm called Brahman. And there, everything is brilliant. Whereas here, the sun is the representative of Brahman. That's why we look at the sun 3 times a day to remember Brahman, to remember the beings who live within Brahman, where we come from. And all of this worldview makes us Mahatma. gives us patience, shows us how to respect every living entity, causes us to not want to cause more harm and destruction. And it unifies us as all part of the same tribe, the same reality, the same beings. And we have that in common. So now, instead of having 100 reasons to harm each other, we have no reasons to, except we're disagreeing about how to sustain the planet and have our children have a future. So we in the Vedic culture, and those of us, of course, it's obvious that people like Sandy and I and all the rest of you have done this from previous lives. That's the point. And so this life, there's no one particular thing that we want to do more than participate in somehow keeping the world from destroying itself. Isn't that really what we're here about? Because look at the world right now. We need a way to talk to everybody that says, okay, if you will, please listen. You're an immortal being. That's why you don't like dying. So now, if we start behaving that way, we won't do all this violence to each other. We'll change the way we live together. Maybe we could do this. And what is this called? Yoga. And what is yoga? Relinking on our way back. All right, I don't want to talk too much more without more
Yes.
questions.
Yes, so we are talking about some Sanskrit words as Sandy ji just let us know even some of the words from the Gita Comes Alive. And you have also told about the universe as we should take universe as university. That is a good example to understand the whole world as one family. So now I would like to have questions from Kamlesh Kapoor ji, and she is with us. Do you like to read out for yourself, or should I read for you now?
No, I do that. First of all, very enlightening. And it is very nice meeting you after such a long time. My question is, what is the Sanskrit word for indulge?
Indulge?
Because the title says Indology group.
What is the Sanskrit word for indology, Jeffrey?
Oh, I see. Well, it's Vedic culture. Because it's not an ology. It's not just a belief system. It's a library. It's an entire culture. So kula, if you think of it, is rooted in Sanskrit. The word culture is from Guru Kula. It's the Guru culture. It's the culture of Bharat. So we need to relink the words like that so that it goes back to something of a more universal nature. And that's, again, the limitation of the English language. So excellent question. Culture is kula.
Word, indulge.
So
Is there terminology? Is there Americanology? Why indology?
well, why psychology?
Yeah.
Because psyche is suke.
Political science.
Suke was a Greek goddess, and ology just means someone who follows suke. But do the psychologists follow the Greek goddess Suke? No. So ology words are just words that don't really have the meaning we would hope they have. So there's no indology. That's just a Western term because they don't understand Veda.
Exactly. That is what I wanted to say, that this word should not be used because a professor of English literature, he says, I am Indologist. And he's writing about history and questioning some of the, basics. My second question is, the word ritual. To me, the word is sanskar or ceremonies and like that. Is this the derivative of rite, which is a Latin word, or is it rit, which is in our Hindu cosmology?
All of those ritu words came from ritam in Sanskrit. And we need to understand this historical process where the Sanskrit went out down the Silk Road 7 to 10,000 to 15,000 years ago. and spread all around. Seeds of Sanskrit live in every language around the world, especially the European languages and Russian, and then the Latin-based or Greek-based languages. It's just that we're unaware of this. And so we use words that are halfway have meaning, but not the correct word. And so the precision and accuracy of our vocabulary is degraded. And we just think voc means to speak. We don't know. It means Saraswati. We don't mean that. We don't know that there's an archetype of vocabulary that is there available to us. That's a universal language that was given so we could cooperate, so we could also have a worldview that was Maha-Atma rather than Duratma. So this is the way that by changing our vocabulary and using the Sanskrit more precisely, we can educate the world one word at a time. And we'll have a new user's manual, but it will be all about this. The Veda will be our user's manual for this larger viewpoint.
Dharma is not to be considered a religion.
The what?
Religion is man-made mandates and dogma. And dharma is standalone.
Well, what religion, remember, is rules. It's legal. The word legal comes from religion. Re ligare. So it means rules. Rules based on what? Well, and now we have to have another word. Are they human rules? No. What are they? Ritam. The rules that govern the universe around us. Is it a universus? That's a Latin term. It's one reality turning. Well, that one's partway there. It is a universus. But what is the uni part? What is that coming from? And this is where we don't have vocabulary in English. So if you take a word and then show that it's wobbling and its meaning isn't precise, you can use the Latin to show this to people because you can show them the root. Like I said with the word Atma, it gave us the word atomic, which means you can't, Atma can't be cut. So then it gave us an atom, like Adam and Eve, it's atom and jiva Atma. Those got perverted from jiva Atma to Eve and Adam. So these words get twisted and then lose their meaning. So as we reestablish that meaning, then so ideal, videya, is vidya. It's from the Sanskrit. Vidya is videya, idea. So video then comes from that. Is a video, if not an idea, animated or made to play in succession. So a video is a videya, it's a vidya, it's Vedic vidya, it's an idea. Once you start seeing these connections, then you go back to the Sanskrit as the mother. And this is what I'm proposing we do, is that word by word, step by step, we help the world have a vocabulary that allows us to live as Mahatma, and we can see the big view. But we need to have a vocabulary to do it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this, and I personally feel that if improve our usage of words in language, in thoughts, and verbal, then it can be included the common usage in the dictionary.
Yes, then we'll all become ambassadors.
Yeah, by using correct words.
Ambassador, that's right. Now,
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for articulating that.
Thank you, Mrs. Kamlesh Kapoor ji. And now we have another question from Dr. Chand Bharadwaj ji. Please.
Thank you very much. Well, my friend Jeffrey Armstrong has beautifully explained the importance of those words. Can waves can make an initiative to introduce words, and each word should have that kind of an analysis which Jeffrey had given. So if we can start formulating a dictionary on it and start explaining those words, as you very rightly said, that one by one, we can develop them and start explaining widely of these words along with the English words or any other language words in bracket, that this is what it means like this and this is how it represents. So this work has to be taken up. So I don't know how far Jeffrey has done this work and how we have to really start working together to formulate this particular booklet.
Thank you, Dr. Chand. That is the book Sandy was mentioning, and it's 108 Sanskrit words every yogi must know. And it's the beginning of a process in this Vedic Renaissance of renewal of our vocabulary and taking steps that are not aggressive, but are universally enlightening for the whole world to start understanding what Bard is truly about.
Well, Jeffrey, I have got one more point to discuss with you.
Yes.
That if we call that God, that Paramatma as absolute intelligence and a capable force, all knowing, all pervading, and with those divine attributes, a longer explanation about that, and then one can use this word that is absolute intelligence and a capable force. And then how to define soul as a creative intelligence with its outer expression as attention. And that attention is like an omni-scanner, which is a capable force. Wherever the attention goes, the divine energy flows. Please.
All right. So let's take that one. That's not exactly what the Atma is. The Atma is actually an individual who is from another realm. And that realm is called Brahman. We're not from here, we're just visitors. We decided to come here and were allowed to come here. We were transported here. The Atmas that we are, we existed in Brahman, we entered Prakriti, and were then taken down to the lowest species, and that's kindergarten. There's 8,400,000 species according to the Vedic literature, and that's all the living entities that populate the Jagat. And there are 400,000 of those are various human species, and we get to go up through all of those. So think of that as K through university. That's the school. We're actually in the school of Matabhumi. But actually it's Prakriti. It's Prakriti. And so this is where we are. We're in the university. And now you're proposing, and I agree, you will make a wonderful professor. You're prepared. You've learned the words. It's just knowing the need of the moment and how to give back this universal individuality to every living entity who will take it back. The reason we don't want to die is we cannot. If we can share that, which is the legacy of the Vedic culture, the world will shift.
Well, I would like to add up small points here, that
Good.
It starts from Ekam Bahushyam, that he became from one to many, and the connection is through the audible stream of life that is known as Nada. And the creative intelligence I would like to call each Atma, which had acquired the mind from the universal mind, which deals with information systems like 2G, 3G, 6G, internet for the modern people to know. It has got chemistry, physics, maths, all in it, including laws of nature. If the apple falls, the Newton calculates the laws of nature. And after acquiring this mind under the heading of causal mind, and created a causal body which is known as Ardhanareshwar, further rather refined it into an astral mind and astral body, which you said 8.4 million species. So the
Right.
soul, creative intelligence, has acquired the mind, created the body from a single cell to reach the crown of creation, the human body. And that is what is a chronology,
So,
that how you
Dr.
created
Chand,
the first life on earth.
what you just exemplified exactly what the solution and the problem are. The English words you were interspersing are incorrect, and the Sanskrit terms and where you're taking everyone is correct. That's because all English speakers are guilty of this. They do not have a dictionary called an etymological dictionary. They have a dictionary called a usage dictionary. The usage dictionary only tells you the illusory way the word's being used by everybody. It's the common use of a word. An etymological dictionary is a dictionary that takes us back to the roots of the word, so we know its actual meaning. And this has not yet been done. So the English that we're speaking, the speakers of English do not understand the words and the meaning of the words that they're using in English, because those words don't have precise meanings often. Therefore, when they try to make them a synonym with a Sanskrit word, it's wrong. I call it original syntax error, because those words are not equivalents. And this is where we're going to make the cure. It's the habit. It's hard to change our linguistic habits when we're later in our years, because we're in the habit of using them in a particular way. But this is the next revolution. We have to stop using sloppy English words as synonyms for precise Sanskrit words. And it'll take a little time, and it'll take a joint effort, but eventually we will do so. So to what you said was about 60% accurate and 40% problematic English words. And if you and I were just sitting together, we would go through them. We would go to the etymological dictionary. We'd see what was the root of that word. Where did it really come from? This is what has not yet happened in English, because the Abrahamic religions and politicians for a one lifetime don't want to validate the Vedic viewpoint. So they don't want to teach this new vocabulary.
I just want to add, this is the
Yeah, let me finish, please. I would like to
Yes.
say that I'll send you, Jeffrey, I'll send you a detailed explanation of about 1 page, and where I would like that you should add on all those things, and where we have to use those words and how we are using it. I am trying to explain spirituality through science and logic without mentioning any religion, for the Abrahamic religions and Christianity to know what it is all about. Because
Yes.
we are saying that creation is an intelligent design. Even a blade of grass is intelligently designed. There got to be an intelligent being who's doing it all.
Yes.
That is what is Param Atma.
That's
And then
right.
how this Atma is representing the absolute, and it had acquired the mind and created the body. And once we became human beings after the apes, we became selfish. Until now, we are multiplied selfish people. How to make us selfless is the effort which I would like to write a small little note, which I am trying to present to the engineering colleges to understand this Indian knowledge system in its right perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chand. Let us do this together. The various persons who are concerned about this should all bring our knowledge and our heads together and our hearts together and say, this is the historical moment for this. So it's lovely to hear you talk, and thank you for your contribution.
Thank you very much.
And
Thanks.
yeah, before we move ahead, because 2-3 more questions are here, so I would like to request that can we have a brief description about the question and later discussion, so that we can accommodate much questions. Now I would like to invite Uma Krishnan ji for her question.
Thank you so much for accommodating me. I'm Dr. Krishnan. I teach, it says something. Okay. I teach literature and global literature. And thank you, namaste, namaskar, for everything that, this is. I got this email, and I'm so glad I'm able to participate in this Waves conference. I do have to mention that, I'm sorry, I'm at home. I'm at the background. So I just have to ask, this is a wonderful project. I would really love to participate in this in many ways. For example, when I teach Varna, immediately it is associated with caste system, and I have to constantly tell the students, no, there is nothing caste about it. So it is, so I have to constantly interject them and tell them this is not the way to assume. For example, even when I say yog, they immediately correct me, that's yoga. So I'm like, okay, I've been born and brought up in this culture, and I know what's like, so it's yoga. But then the etymology of the words. So I'm very curious. There are two things that I'm curious about. First, they always say, and doctor, I think one of the participants was mentioning about Indology. And it is always referred to, and Behrani as he was the, he's the one who established the Indian Indology, which kind of sometimes I try to see, okay, we are human beings under one, under one umbrella. I should not get upset. But it is these distortion of words and how it goes on and spreads in the wrong way. And that is something. So this is a great project. I admire that you are doing this and starting. For example, simple word like yog has become yoga over a period of time, and how did it become? So that is one thing. And like, you are absolutely correct, Indology, there is nothing like Indology, but where did it come from? Because of travelers taking these, Indus, has become Hindu, and India, and Sanatana Dharma has become all this. So interesting how, words reverberate and different connotations come up. That is one thing I wanted to say. Do you have any repertoire for this, how others are claiming that this is not original to India, it is outside India, people discovered India? It is like Indian scholars are never given consideration. It's like, so they are never looked upon as true rhetoricians, so which is sad. And the other part I wanted to ask you, sir, was sorry for the phone call. The other part I wanted to ask you was, how are you able to go back? Are you going to Vishnu Purana and taking out words from there, or what is your methodology that you're using for going to the root of the words? I'm just out of curiosity, I'm asking. Thank you so much for answering those questions. I appreciate that.
This is where the linguistic work is a very difficult work for adults to undertake, because they would like to think that they learned language when they were growing up, and that only children need to learn language. To relearn language is very psychologically challenging, because what you think you know, and then a word that is precise to represent that, this is what English does not do, cannot do, and can only do with the assistance of a new vocabulary. And there is no other language in the world which has a precise enough vocabulary for that to be accomplished. This is where the Sanskrit comes in, where Sanskritam, where this perfected language is going to allow us to get precise. So, for example, the word atomic comes from what? Atma.
Atma.
Just as you were pointing out yoga and yoga, but it's even better with atomic and Atma. Yeah, so the Atma cannot be split, but the atom could be and can be. But the atom stole the name from Atma, meaning you can't cut it, you can't burn it, you can't kill it, you can't destroy it. So the word atom is incorrect. And it's interesting that Adam and Eve was the same word getting thrown around, but Atma is something different. And the only culture I know of in the world that sees Atmas as having an unlimited number of births, discusses that, has a literature based on that, and has descriptions of how to live that. The culture is not India, it's Bharat, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And it's from the Vedic library
Yes.
and
Yes.
so on. And Veda means Vidya, and Vidya is Videya or idea. So our ideas come from the Veda. We're going to do this together as a team.
Okay. I like that.
Yes. As all the pundits, all the scholars that know some of this are going to put their heads together
Mhm.
and sort it out. And I'm just starting the momentum, but
Mhm.
I'm not qualified enough in Sanskrit to take it to perfection. And I know that. I know what a pundit is. My guru of Sanskrit was a pundit.
Mhm.
But when this happens,
Mhm.
instead of Latin being the source of language,
Mhm.
Sanskrit is going to be undisputably the source of language. And we're going to do this in the next decade, over the next 10 years.
Thank you so much for this good wishes. Let's hope that many of these words go back to the roots of how they should be used, how they were started with. So thank you so much. And the question was the etymology. What is the methodology that you're using for tracing the words back? Is there a methodology that you're using, or is it?
Jeffrey,
I
if
just
I
want
could
to know
answer
that out
that
of
one.
curiosity. Thank
Yes,
you.
Sandy,
I'd like to answer that question.
please do.
Our Gita came out 4 years ago. Bhagavad Gita Comes Alive. When we originally started working on the Bhagavad Gita, Jeffrey wanted to smooth out the language of the Bhagavad Gita and modernize it. As we got working on it, he realized that English drifted. In other words, there's linguistic drift in English that is just horrible, whereas Sanskrit, you all know, does not drift. The meaning stays the same for thousands and thousands of years. So a dictionary came in, and Jeffrey reads dictionaries cover to cover. He practically memorizes them. But there's a dictionary that came into our home called Origins. It is probably the only dictionary that takes English words back to Sanskrit. They all take them back to Latin or Greek. So when that dictionary came in, it was the work of Eric Partridge. You can get it online as a PDF.
Okay.
That opened up an absolute can of worms. Now, it just doesn't mean that the Sanskrit words were wrong, but as Jeffrey mentioned earlier, how you're describing the Sanskrit words into English is wrong. So if you remember, Sanskrit was made illegal by Macaulay. He said he took it out of the schools. And so Sanskrit became a so-called dead language because he realized just how smart this language was. So it is so important now that Jeffrey started putting all of these things together. So as some of you have already spoken, you know that there's a problem with it, but you don't know the English word to substitute. In other words, the English were colonizers, and they gave you substandard meanings to the words. And don't forget, Jeffrey always says, England was in mud huts when India was at its height. So you have to understand, you had a bunch of colonizers coming into your country with guns and making you feel inferior. So they just dumbed down. So you were taught this dumbed down English meanings for your fabulous Sanskrit words. So it is a huge project. I've worked with him for years. So it's not just explaining it, it's explaining it using the right English, knowing that English will eventually drift. How many of you right now can understand Shakespeare English? And that was only a couple of 100 years ago. So Jeffrey has realized what a monumental project this is. We have got 108 words to start with, but also it's just not pointing out the 108 words, it's defining them in a script that Bharat will be able to reproduce especially with the youth. As you know, the youth are just picking up all of the bad habits of the other English speakers. So once this book is complete, we've got all the research done. We're short on manpower always. We need help with this. Getting this book out and into the hands of the Indian youth will change the next generation. And as Jeffrey said, sometimes the older generation, it's too hard to unprogram how you've been using the language. But our hope is that the next generation will catch on. So I hope that explains how we're doing the process. And you do have to be a high-level English speaker to catch the traps, so to speak. Jeffrey, I hope I haven't overspoken, but
Not at all.
I'm sort of a nuts and bolts kind of girl. How do you make it happen?
Absolutely. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, and you didn't. Oh, go ahead. Hannah's got a question. I'll be.
Yes, I think time is running out, but still, I think we can accommodate one or two questions more. Even I have the one or two questions to ask. So again, Hannah ji, what do you want to say? You can add, please. You're muted.
Namaste. Also, I'd like to briefly ask, because I have read the Bhagavad Gita Comes Alive, which Sandy just mentioned, and I noticed that not only are you redefining words in English, but you're also removing some words. So one of the words, for example, I noticed you don't use, compared to other Gitas, is the word Lord. You don't use that word in your version. So why did you not use that word, for example? Why did you remove Lord from the Gita?
All right, very easy on that one. Back in Old English, the owners of the properties that the peasants worked on as slaves were called Haflard and Haflady. Haflard and Haflady gave us the word Lord and Lady. And the HALF, that was the first part of the word, was loaf. It became the word loaf, as in a loaf of bread, because the lady who was the multi-billionaire wife would make the bread, and her husband would protect the bread and distribute it to the slaves who were working for bread, which we now call money, bread. How about that? We're ex-slaves. And Lord and Lady is where the slave owner was. So if you call Jesus Lord, you're calling him a slave owner. That's what the English word Lord means, a slave owner giving bread to the slaves who work for the slave owner. That's the actual meaning of Lord. So now, do you want to use it for Krishna? No. Do you want to use it for, no. From then on, it's out. It's a disgusting word. It's about slavery. It's about giving people bread to be your slave. And Lord simply means protecting that. So I wanted to tell you one more funny thing. There was a gentleman named Lord Macaulay. And Lord Macaulay was a representative sent by England to Bharat during colonization to find out how to destroy the culture and dominate it. And he came back, and Lord Macaulay, so glad you asked about that word, went before the British, and he said, I've been to India, and the culture there is amazing and very profound, but it's resting upon the Sanskrit language. So in order to destroy the culture, we must remove the Sanskrit language from the educational system and place English in its place. That's how this happened. That's the exact historical event, practically the same words that he said at that time. And we are still recovering from the mess that was created by Macaulayism and the removal of Sanskrit and the purposeful distortion of it with English. Lordy, lordy, lordy. It's a whole bunch of colonizing enslavement. And we're still speaking the enslavement language of English and calling it English. What it really is the colonizing language that Lord Macaulay sent out to take over the world. And we're in recovery right now. And I'm so glad to be with you today in this process of recovery. And yes, the next generation needs to know this. And the book Sandy was talking about is on its way and will be finished soon. And others like it to follow as we pursue this and institute it. So I hope that some of you can assist, and we will start doing this experimentally in universities in Bharat. We can find a few that become the home of this, and perhaps we can actually save the next generation from the linguistic chaos that they're immersed in right now. All right, there you go. And thank you, Sandhya Devi, for your contributions.
Yes, and we have Dr. Shashi Tiwari ji among us, and she said Nirukta is the first Vedic book by Yask for etymology. Firstly, we have to find out the roots of the word there. So I would like to invite Dr. Tiwari ji if for adding few words on what she said.
That is Vyutpatti Shastra, and that is in Vedic texts. There are in Nirukta, and under Nirukta we find that, and it is the first book which talks about Vyutpatti, and all the Vedic words, can be etymologically understood if we will understand the root, what is the root inside that word. So there is a way, scientific way, and all the Sanskrit words are dhatujaha shabdaha. They are made of root, and root has a meaning. So when a thing was named firstly, then only root was the basis of that formation. So Sanskrit is a very scientific language, as you know, and all the words, they have their meaning. And now I am writing my latest book this time, and I have decided what Mrs. Kapoor was saying, and you are saying, this is the problem, Sanskrit words to translate. It is in fact the book Shiva Sutram, you may be knowing, and the Chaitanya Mahatma, this is the first sutra. So neither Chaitanya can be explained in English, nor Atma can be explained in English. So I have decided that I will use the Sanskrit word only in my explanation. And firstly, I will give the glossary and meaning of the words there to understand nearby meaning of that word. So I am happy to listen to you. It was a good talk, and I am happy that Dev Bhasha Sanskrit is recognized by us very, very devotionally. And sometimes I think that why it is called Dev Bhasha, Devanam Bhasha, the language of the deities. So probably the name is given because all the stutis, all the stotras, all the prayers of devatas are done in Sanskrit. So they understand only in Sanskrit. That is why it is Deva Bhasha. Even today prayers we are doing our prayers in Sanskrit language. All language speakers use Sanskrit as for invocation. So it is Deva Bhasha, it is Girvana Bharati. So it is not difficult, it is very sarla, madhura bhasha. And thank you very much for your great presentation on Sanskrit language and literature. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tiwari ji. And one very simple question from my side. Recently, I visited in US, and as we know that Mother Earth is the concept from Bharat. But I've seen that one of my friend there in US claimed. I mean, she said that because there was a kind of a hurricane coming in Florida, and she said, "Let Mother Nature be kind." So I was happy to see that, in fact, and I asked Professor Balram Singh ji, he's my director of the institute where I'm working. I asked him this Mother Earth concept is from Bharat, and US people are also saying, considering recognizing nature as their mother. So is there any similarity, or they are just following us, or something different? So can we have your opinion, Jeffrey ji?
I'd be glad to. And my answer is one of my favorites. Om yasyam samudra bhuta sindurabo yasyam bandam prashtaya sambhavu yasyamidam jinvati pranadeva sano bhumi purume he dadatu vishvambara vasudani pratishta hiranyavaksha jagato niveshani vaishvanaram didvati bhumir agni indra ushabata mineno dadatu hiryasve parvata Himavanto Anyam Dev Prithivisyo Namaskuru Arjun Krishna Rohini Vishvarupam Ruam Bhumi Prithivi Indra Gupta Ajato Hato Akshato Jeshtam Prithivi Aham Yate Madhyam Prithivi Akshanabhyam Yastabulyastan Vasambhavuhu Dasu Loke Habina Prabhasvabhata Bhumi Putro Aham Pratibhyaha Parjanya Pita Sapurna Vipaltu. May we all work together as the children of Mata Bhumi, giving her the credit, loving and honoring her together. And this Vedic Vidya is the lifeblood of Mata Bhumi. And so thank you for allowing me to speak. I've come into this great culture after many lifetimes wearing this Caucasian skin, but the heart of a Vedic pursuer in pursuant of that Vedic Vidya. So thank you very much, and thank you for your contribution.
Yeah, very wonderfully you have recited these mantras from Bhumi Sukta of Atharva Veda. So they are very, very famous mantras. And Mata Bhumi Putroham Prathivya. This is the first time on the human library this word is used in the Atharva Veda. In the Atharva Veda.
If that was addressed to me, I couldn't hear it. There was an interference.
Dr. Tiwari ji was appreciating the rhythm of the mantras you have just recited, and it was we are glad to have that recitation from you, sir, because sometimes even I can't recite such beautifully the Bhumi Sukta mantra.
Bhumi Sukta from Atharva Veda, yes.
It is by her loving energy given to me by my gurus. I was simply looking for something that was true, and I found it in Bharat, in the Vedas, and with the acharyas who have taught me. So it's all, the credit is theirs. Thank you.
Yes. So with the mantras from the Bhumi Sukta of Atharva Veda, I think we can conclude this particular session of today here. And the interaction was good, and because it was so lively, as the speaker spoke only for 30 minutes, and then we have ample of time, I think, like around more than an hour we had for the interaction, and he has spoken about a lot of words from the Sanskrit which can be used in our day-to-day life, and there is no need to replace those words with English or any other language, because otherwise it will lose their charm. So we are glad to have Jeffrey G with us today, because he has given us this vision and direction today with his talk, and we are happy that he has accepted our invitation. We also thankful to Sandy G for giving some in between some explanations and about his work and about those hidden thoughts which which was not highlighted in the talk by Jeffrey G, but Sandy G has given her observations there, added her observations. So we are thankful to her. We are also thankful to our many speakers who have, in fact, the scholars from the audience who have initiated interactions with Jeffrey G. That makes our discussion today more interesting and enlightening. So we are thankful to Professor Balram Singh Ji from Waves International, Dr. Shashi Tiwari Ji, President Waves India, and many other like Professor Lalan Prasad Ji, Dr. Vidyasagar Verma Ji, Dr. Chand Bharadwaj Ji, Dr. R.S. Kaushal Ji, and many other from invited by Jeffrey Ji, like Hannah Ji and Annie and Uma Krishnan Ji and others who have joined this conversation today. So with these words, now I would like to invite all of you for our Waves One Day National Seminar, which is going to held on 6th of December 2024 in Daulat Ram College of University of Delhi. And just let me share my screen. Wait a minute. Those who are in India or those who want to like to travel from US, they can join because this is a one-day national seminar on organized by Waves India, and this is about relevance of Vedic knowledge traditions in modern times, Vedic ज्ञान परंपरा की आधुनिक समय में प्रासंगिकता. And this is going to be a whole day event. And as we have already celebrated our 28th India Conference of Waves in US this year. So this is an extension of that only. So please do join us. And this is will be offline only, not online. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And we will like to meet you in 2025 now. And Happy New Year to all of you. And now one Mangal Kamna I want to do. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukh bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Dhanyavad.